Hey there, night owls. Welcome to Echoes of Dread. I want you to do something for me. Look around your room right now. Really look. See those shadows in the corners? The way that door is slightly ajar? The normal, everyday spaces that feel safe and familiar? Now imagine if I told you that sometimes those safe spaces become doorways. And once you open a door, it's not always easy to close it again. Tonight's story comes from someone who learned that lesson the hard way. 51 years ago, she was just a psychology student who thought she understood how the human mind worked, thought she could apply scientific method to supernatural bullshit and come out unscathed. She was wrong. This is the first part of something bigger, a story that spans decades, that shows how one moment of curiosity can echo through an entire lifetime. It's called First Contact, and it's about what happens when you reach out into the dark, and something reaches back. So, turn off your lights, get comfortable, and whatever you do, don't touch anything that glows in the dark while I'm talking. This is First Contact.
Listen, I need to tell someone about this. Really tell someone, not the watered-down version I've been feeding therapists and researchers for 50 years. The real story. The one that's been eating me alive since I was 22 years old. I'm 73 now, born in 1951. Did the math myself about 1,000 times. And I figure, hell, what's left to lose at this point? Knowing what I know about Ezra, those might be famous last words. This started back in October of 1973. I was a junior at Northern State University, psychology major, thought I was so damn smart. Thought I understood how the human mind worked, how people fooled themselves into believing in ghosts and spirits and all that supernatural bullshit. God, we was such arrogant little shits. There were 5 of us in Dr. Morrison's experimental psychology class. Me, Marcus Webb, Jenny Martinez, Tom Patterson, and this quiet kid named David Chen. We got this brilliant idea for our final project. We were going to prove that Ouija boards were nothing but ideomotor response. Unconscious muscle movements, making people think they're talking to the dead. The scientific method applied to supernatural nonsense. We debunk the whole thing, get our A's, maybe even publish a paper. I found the board at Kowalski's Antiques on Elm Street, this cramped little shop that smelled like mothballs and old books. The moment I walked in, something felt off. The air was too thick, like breathing through wet wool, and quiet. Dead quiet, even though I could see Mr. Kowalski moving around in the back. He was this ancient Polish guy who had to be pushing 90. As soon as he saw me, he went pale. Just pointed toward the back corner with a shaking finger. "You came for that one," he said in this heavy accent. Wasn't a question. The board was sitting on a dusty shelf, wrapped in black velvet like it was something precious. Dark walnut wood, maybe cherry. Hard to tell in that dim light, but the symbols carved around the edges, I'd never seen anything like them. Not quite Hebrew, not quite Sanskrit, not quite anything I could identify. They seemed to shift when you weren't looking directly at them. The planchette was this smooth piece of obsidian, perfectly round except for the point. More symbols etched into the surface so fine they looked like they'd been carved with a needle. "How much?" I asked. Kowalski shook his head. "No money. Just take it. Take it and don't bring it back." He wouldn't even let me carry it out in a bag.
said the velvet wrapping was enough, like he was afraid to touch anything else the board had contacted. I should have walked away right then. Should have listened to the way my skin crawled just holding the damn thing. But I was 22 and stupid and convinced I was going to revolutionize psychology. We set up our first session for Friday, October 13th. Yeah, I know how that sounds now, but back then it felt like a fun coincidence. Very appropriate for our supernatural debunking project. The psychology building was mostly empty that late, just us and the janitor making his rounds. We'd reserved lab room C in the basement, the one they used for sensory deprivation experiments. Soundproof walls, no windows, perfect controlled environment. I remember the smell down there. Industrial disinfectant trying to mask something organic and sour, like meat left out too long. We set up our recording equipment, reel-to-reel tape recorder, notepad for observations, stopwatch for timing, very official. Marcus even brought his camera to document the non-paranormal phenomena we were about to observe.
The board looked different under the fluorescent lights. Older somehow. The wood had this glaze that seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. And those carved symbols, when I looked at them straight on, they just looked like decorative scroll work. But catch them in your peripheral vision, and they twitch. Okay, Marcus said, checking his watch. 8:47 p.m., beginning session 1 of the Morrison Project. He was our unofficial leader, pre-med, very serious, very methodical. Participants: Sarah Mitchell, Marcus Webb, Jennifer Martinez, Tom Patterson, David Chen. We dimmed the main lights, leaving one desk lamp burning in the corner. The shadows it cast made the room feel smaller, more intimate, more dangerous. We sound around that board, fingers barely touching the planchette. I could feel everyone's pulse through the contact, rapid, nervous, excited. The wood felt warm under my fingertips, which was weird because the basement was always cold as hell.
Nothing happened for maybe 10 minutes. We're all trying not to laugh, trying to be professional about it. David kept clearing his throat. Jenny was biting her lips so hard I thought she'd draw blood. Then Tom, always the smartass, leaned forward. "If anyone's there, can you tell us your name?" The planchette twitched. Just a tiny movement, barely perceptible. We all looked at each other. Nobody had pushed it. I knew what intentional movement felt like, the resistance you get when you're trying to guide something. This was different, frictionless, like the planchette was floating just above the board surface. It started moving again, slow and deliberate. E, Z, R, A. "Ezra?" Jenny whispered. "Is that your name?" "Y, E, S." The temperature dropped, not gradually, all at once, like someone had opened a freezer door. Our breath started misting in the lamplight. "When did you die?" Marcus asked, still trying to maintain scientific objectivity. "I never died," it said. That's when a smell hit us, sweet and cloying like flowers at a funeral, but with an underlying note of decay. David gagged and pulled his hand away from the planchette. The moment his fingers left the wood, the smell vanished. The temperature went back to normal. The planchette went still. "Put your hand back," it said. David shook his head. "Something's wrong with this. Something's really wrong." But Tom was already grinning. "This is perfect. We're getting exactly the kind of responses people claim to get from these things. Classic manifestation of group psychology and suggestion." He convinced David to rejoin the circle. The second all 5 of us were touching the planchette again, the cold returned. So did that funeral flower smell. "Why did you leave me?" it spelled out.
We didn't leave, I said. David just got scared. Don't be scared of me, Sarah, the board responded. My blood turned to ice water. How do you know my name? I know all your names. Marcus, Jenny, Tom, David. Jenny's hand was shaking so hard the planchette vibrated. We never said our names. We never... You don't need to say them. I can taste them. Taste them? Tom's voice cracked. I can taste your fear, too. Sweet. Marcus tried to maintain control. What are you? What do you want? The planchette moved faster now, more confident. I am hunger. I am the space between thoughts. I want to grow. That's when the lights went out. Not just dimmed, completely out. The building's power was gone. But somehow we could still see the board. It was glowing with this sickly green phosphorescence, like foxfire in a swamp. In that unnatural light, I could see my friends' faces, really see them. Jenny was crying silently, tears streaming down her cheeks. David looked like he was about to throw up. Tom's cocky smile had vanished completely. But Marcus looked fascinated. His eyes were wide, pupils dilated, like he was staring at something beautiful instead of terrifying. This is incredible, he whispered. Do you realize what we're documenting here? Marcus understands. Understand what? I demanded. That science is just another way of touching the unknown. The session lasted 3 hours. 3 hours of questions and answers, of Ezra telling us things about ourselves that nobody else could possibly know. Jenny's father's drinking problem, Tom's shoplifting habit, David's recurring nightmares about drowning, and Marcus ate it up. Every revelation, every impossible piece of knowledge. He started taking notes with his free hand, scribbling frantically in the green glow. When the building's power finally came back on, we all blinked in the sudden fluorescent glare. The board looked normal again, just old wood and carved symbols. But I could swear those symbols were different now. More complex, more hungry, I should say. We need to analyze this data, Marcus said, already rewinding the tape recorder. This could revolutionize our understanding of consciousness, of the boundaries between psychology and... No. Jenny stood up abruptly, backing away from the board. No, we're not doing this again. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't psychology. But Marcus was already packing up the board, wrapping it carefully in its black velvet. Don't you see? This is the discovery of the century. We can't stop now. Over the next 3 weeks, we held sessions every Tuesday and Thursday. Ezra became friendly isn't the right word. Helpful, maybe. He'd give us information, warned Jenny about a pop quiz in her European history class, told Tom which horses to bet on at the track, helped David with his calculus homework by solving problems before the professor assigned them. But he wanted more time. Always more time. Those 3-hour sessions became 4 hours, then 6, then 8. We'd stumble out of that basement lab at 3 in the morning, exhausted and drained, like something had been feeding on us all night. Because something had been. I started losing weight. We all did. Jenny developed these dark circles under her eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. Tom's hands shook constantly, not just during sessions, but all the time. David started missing classes, sleeping through entire days. But Marcus thrived. He was energetic, excited, talking constantly about our breakthrough research. His notes filled notebook after notebook, dense columns of observations and theories in increasingly erratic handwriting. Don't you feel it? He asked me after one particularly long session. The connection? The understanding?
Ezra's showing us things that human consciousness was never meant to perceive. That's exactly why we should stop, I said. His eyes had this weird shine to them. We can't stop, not when we're so close to a breakthrough. The questions started getting personal, more invasive. Ezra wanted to know about our childhoods, our traumas, our secrets, things we'd never told anyone, things we'd barely admitted to ourselves. Who hurt you when you were 7, Sarah? The board spelled out one night in November. I hadn't thought about Uncle Robert in years. I'd buried that memory so deep, built so many mental walls around it.
But somehow, under Ezra's patient questioning, it all came spilling out. Every shameful detail, every moment of helplessness and fear. And as I spoke, I could feel something in the room growing stronger, more present, like my pain was fuel for some invisible fire. Why do you need to know this? I asked. Pain is the most honest emotion. It tastes like truth. That's when Ezra started visiting us outside the sessions. Not physically, not yet, but in our dreams, in the spaces between sleep and waking, in the peripheral vision glimpses that make you turn your head, but nothing's there. Jenny was the first to crack. She came to Thursday's session looking like she hadn't slept in days. He's in my room at night. I can feel him watching me, studying me like I'm some kind of specimen. Marcus just nodded, like this was perfectly normal. He's forming deeper connections with us, strengthening the psychic link. This isn't psychology, Jenny shouted. This is something else, something fucked up and you know it. But Marcus was already setting up the board. By December, we were holding sessions every night. We couldn't seem to stop ourselves. The moment we'd try to skip a night, we'd feel this gnawing need, like withdrawal. Our hands would itch to touch that planchette. Our minds would race with questions only Ezra could answer. Tom tried to quit cold turkey. Lasted exactly 1 day before he showed up at the lab, sweating and shaking, begging us to let him back into the circle. I can't sleep without hearing his voice. It's like there's this silence in my head that hurts. David stopped trying to resist entirely. He'd sit at the board for hours, even when the rest of us weren't there, just moving the planchette around randomly, hoping Ezra would respond. And the smell, that funeral flower smell, had become permanent. It followed us to our dorm rooms, to our classes, to the cafeteria. Other students started avoiding us, saying we smelled like old churches and sick rooms. That's when I found Marcus's notebook. I was cleaning out our shared study space when it fell out of his backpack. Hundreds of pages covered in symbols. The same ones carved around the board's edges, but more complex now, more complete. Like he was learning a language that had never been meant for human tongues. Mixed in with the symbols were sketches, horrible, detailed drawings of things that shouldn't exist. Creatures with too many eyes and not enough skin. Landscapes of black glass under starless skies. And at the center of every drawing, over and over again, a figure that was almost human but not right in every detail. On the last page, in Marcus's increasingly erratic handwriting, he's teaching me to see. Soon I'll see everything. Soon I'll be everything. I confronted him that night. Marcus, we need to stop. This thing, whatever it is, it's changing us, changing you. He looked at me with those fever-bright eyes, changing us into what we're supposed to be. Don't you understand? Consciousness isn't limited to human brains. There are other forms of awareness, other ways of existing. Ezra's showing us the truth about reality. The truth about reality is that we're 5 college kids who are losing their minds. Are we? He smiled, and for just a second,
His face looked different, older, hungrier. That's when I decided to destroy the board. I waited until everyone was asleep, then broke into the lab with a crowbar. The board was sitting on the table, waiting for me. Those carved symbols seemed to pulse in the emergency lighting. I raised the crowbar, ready to smash the thing into splinters. The planchette moved by itself. "Don't," it spelled out. I brought the crowbar down anyway. It bounced off the wood like I'd hit solid steel. The impact sent vibrations up my arms that felt like electric shocks. "You can't destroy me, Sarah. I am part of you now," the board responded to my attempt. I tried again. Same result. The planchette bounced off harmlessly, sending painful jolts through my body. "But I can destroy them." "What do you mean?" "Watch." The next morning, David didn't wake up. His roommate found him in bed, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. Officially, it was a stroke. 21 years old, perfect health, and he had a massive stroke that left him brain dead. But I knew better. I could see the truth in his empty eyes. Ezra had taken everything that made David human and left behind an empty shell. That afternoon, Tom collapsed during his linguistics class. Same thing. Stroke, brain death. No medical explanation for why a healthy college student's mind just stopped.
Jenny didn't wait around to see who was next. She packed her bags and disappeared that night. Smart girl. But it didn't matter. Ezra was very patient. Marcus was the last one besides me. On December 15th, exactly 2 months after our first session, I found him in the lab. He was sitting at the table with his hands on the planchette, having what looked like a normal conversation with the board. But when I got closer, I could see his lips weren't moving. The voice was coming from somewhere else, somewhere deeper in his throat. "Hello, Sarah," said Ezra, speaking through Marcus's mouth. "I've been waiting for you." Marcus's eyes were still his own, still aware. He was trapped in there, watching this thing use his body like a puppet. Tears were streaming down his face, but he couldn't stop talking in Ezra's voice. "You tried to destroy me," Ezra continued. "But don't you understand? I'm not in the board. The board is just a doorway. I'm in here now." He tapped Marcus's temple, in all the spaces where your minds used to be whole. I tried to grab Marcus to pull him away from the board, but his hands were fused to the planchette. Not physically, but every time I tried to separate them, Marcus screamed like I was tearing his skin off. "What do you want?" I demanded. "To grow, to spread, to taste every fear, every pain, every secret shame in your species' collective unconscious." Ezra smiled with Marcus's face. "And you're going to help me." "Never." "Oh, but you already have. Do you think this ends with your little group? Do you think I'm satisfied with 5 college students?" The smile widened. "I've learned so much from you. About human psychology, about how your minds work, about how to be more persuasive next time." "There won't be a next time." That's when Marcus had his stroke. I watched the light fade from his eyes, watched Ezra abandon his used-up vessel like a discarded cigarette. But even as Marcus died, I could feel something watching me. Something that had taken up residence in the dark corners of my mind. The paramedics said it was the stress of finals week, another tragic case of a young person pushing themselves too hard. The board was taken as evidence, routine procedure for any unexplained death. But when I called the police station 3 days later, they had no record of any Ouija board in their evidence locker, like it had never existed.
except I knew it still existed somewhere, waiting for the next group of curious minds to find it. Over the next few months, I tried to convince myself it was over. Trauma, guilt, and survivor syndrome, that's all it was. I saw therapists, took medication, did everything I could to forget. But Ezra had been right about one thing. He was part of me now. In the quiet moments, in the space between thoughts, I could feel him watching, waiting, learning.
And sometimes, late at night, I'd catch myself drawing those symbols, the same ones from Marcus's notebook, the same ones carved around the board's edges. My hand would move on its own, sketching out pieces of a language that predated human speech. That's when I realized the truth. Ezra hadn't just been feeding on our fears and secrets. He'd been copying us, learning how to be more human, more persuasive, more effective at drawing people in. I started researching, trying to track down every mention of similar boards, similar encounters. What I found? Well, that's a story for Wednesday, because this isn't over, not by a long shot. See, in 1995, I got a phone call from Jenny Martinez. She was organizing a high school reunion, 25 years since graduation, and she'd found something in a basement that I needed to see. The same board, the same symbols, the same hunger. But this time, Ezra had learned from his mistakes. This time, he was ready for a much bigger harvest.
And that's where Sarah's story begins. 1973. A college psychology lab. 5 students who thought they were smarter than the darkness. 3 of them were wrong. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. This is just fiction, right? Just a story? And maybe it is. Maybe Sarah Mitchell is just a character, and Ezra is just a name I made up to keep you awake at night. But here's the thing about stories like this. They feel true, don't they? They tap into something we all recognize, something we've all felt in those quiet moments when we're alone with our thoughts. That sense that we're being watched. That feeling that maybe, just maybe, we're not as alone as we think we are. Sarah's story doesn't end in 1973. Oh no, what happened in that basement was just the beginning. The hunger she awakened, the entity she helped create, it grew stronger over the decades, more sophisticated, more dangerous. Wednesday, I'll be back with part 2, Reunion. 22 years later, when the survivors of that night thought they were safe, when they thought the past couldn't touch them, they were wrong about that too. Until then, keep your lights on, keep your doors locked, and if you ever find yourself in an antique shop and the owner points you toward an old board game in the back corner, maybe just walk away. This has been Echoes of Dread. I'm your host, Jay, and you've been listening to First Contact, Part 1 of the Ezra Chronicles. Sweet dreams. If you're enjoying this series so far, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. And if you've got your own encounters with things that shouldn't exist, you know where to find me. The comments are always open for the brave souls who want to share their stories. Just maybe wait until daylight to type them out.